High School in America, Chapter 17. As I said, I wanted to start school as soon as my feet hit American soil, but we arrived too late in the year. Summer vacation was about to start, so I had to wait until the following September. When the time came at last, Alice figured out which district I lived in and which school I was supposed to attend. She also found out when I should register. We refugees were supposed to start a week later than the others for some reason. The day I arrived on campus, the regular students had already started classes. I saw them all over the yard and in the halls and classrooms, hundreds upon hundreds of American kids. My heart quailed. After I completed my paperwork in the office, they sent me to another room to meet with my counselor and work out my schedule. On the way, I saw more American students swarming up and down the stairs, laughing and talking together in groups, throwing their arms around one another. I felt like I ought to be one of them, because I was about the same age, and yet I felt so separate, so different. Some of them were clad in black clothes from head to foot and wore heavy chains around their necks. I had no idea what their uniforms signified. All the students intimidated me, but those especially. My counselor discussed what classes I should take and then told me I would start the following week. When I got home, I said, Allah, how will I do going to school with so many Americans? Will they stare? Will they laugh at me? If I try to talk to them, I will probably say the wrong thing. Will they tease me? Each night that week, as I tried to get to sleep, I pictured myself surrounded by jeering American kids asking why I walked like I did and what was wrong with my leg. I pictured them cursing me and hitting me. Finally, the big day came and I went to school. I was entering as a freshman. As it turned out, all my classmates that year were going to be ESL students. They came from Mexico, from Spain, from India, from Russia, from many countries. I had no American classmates that year at all, but Americans surrounded me in the hallways as I moved from one class to another, and they surrounded me in the lunchroom. To my surprise, however, none of them even glanced at me, much less spoke to me. They just went by in a blur. I began to cheer up and believe I might survive in this school. I saw that my fellow students were not going to tease me because I wasn't even in the world of their concerns. They didn't notice that I even existed. Later, I began to want more attention, but in those early days, invisibility suited me just fine. I felt relieved. During that first week, a teacher's aide went everywhere with me. She showed me all the places I needed to know about in that school, my classrooms, the cafeteria, the locker area, and so on. I needed that guidance because it was a big 3-story building and I could easily have gotten lost. My English classes were on the 3rd floor, my math classes on the 2nd floor, and my art class on the 1st floor. In my ESL classes, I got to know an Indian girl named Apanza. I met 2 Afghan girls as well. They had come to America 1 year earlier than I had, therefore gone to American schools 1 year longer. But we were all in the same class. In any case, I had companions now. I could speak with the Afghan girls in Farsi and the Indian girl in Urdu, which I had learned in Pakistan. At lunchtime, my new friends and I always ate together in the school cafeteria. After a while, I stopped feeling quite so lonely. My favorite classes were English and art. I liked art because I didn't have to listen or speak there. I could just draw or paint, which I found blessedly restful. After Christmas, I signed up for a piano class too. I'd never seen a piano before, but I learned to play the instrument a bit, although I've forgotten everything I learned by now. At the end of the semester, however, I took part in my class's recital. A few weeks before the show, the teacher presented each of us with a list of tunes and asked us to pick one. I chose a song called Money Can't Buy You Love. I practiced it every day and then played it at the recital. All the parents came to watch the performance. My mother was there, and so was my other mother, Alice. The Indian girls' parents came too. I made a few mistakes, but it didn't matter. The parents all enjoyed the show. They would have clapped no matter how or what we played. I found math especially difficult. I'd studied math formally only to the 2nd grade. And that was in Afghanistan, where we were only went to school a couple hours a day. All I learned there were the small numbers. In school, I never learned the big numbers. Later, in Pakistan, somehow or other, I learned to add, subtract, and even divide a little, just from handling money. Along the way, I picked up a few of the multiplication tables too, maybe half of them. When I was tested for basic math skills and they gave me problems that involved adding or subtracting, I could do them. I could do division problems too, but only with small, even numbers. If 3 or 4-digit numbers were involved, I got lost. And if a subtraction problem involved borrowing, I couldn't do that either. They put me in a basic math that first year, but since I progressed quickly, they decided to bump me ahead to pre-algebra toward the end of the year. There, I didn't do so well, in part because I couldn't follow the teacher's English. And since I couldn't learn anything from his explanations, I had to watch what he wrote on the chalkboard and try to figure out what he might be saying. The math had gotten ahead of my English. I wanted to drop back, but the counselor told me, no, stick with what you're doing. You'll catch up eventually. As soon as the regular school year ended, I started summer school because I could not afford to take any time off. I studied English from 8 a.m. to noon, and then from 12:30 to 4, I took algebra. I should have taken a pre-algebra class in summer school, but they didn't offer it, so I jumped into the only math they did offer. In that class, I floundered. All the other students were American kids who had failed Algebra 1, during the school year and were taking it again to get credit. The teacher assumed that all of us were going through this material for the second time, so he moved very fast. As soon as I discovered how hard it was, I wanted to drop out, but Alice encouraged me to stay in the course. It's free, she pointed out. You're sure to learn something, she added. It's okay to fail, you know. Well, I stayed in that course, but I didn't feel like it was okay to fail. That's just not my temperament. So I tried very hard to catch up, but I just couldn't, and the effort brought me to tears. Alice saw me in that state one day and said, come home with me. Let's have some tea and talk it over. When we got to her house, she said, what you really need is a little fun. We can talk about algebra later. Alice had a bride's outfit at home, a white dress with a beautiful gauzy veil and some flowers. She got me to dress up in that outfit and took pictures of me. Alice knew I liked being photographed, and it was great fun pretending to get married. And forgetting about algebra for a few hours did make me feel a bit better. But I did nothing to improve my algebra. I did fail that course, and yet Alice always right. Somehow I did learn something. When school started back up, I decided to take basic math again in order to get a really solid foundation in math. I learned fractions, multiplication, long division, everything you're supposed to learn in your first 7 years of math, and I got an A. Now I'm taking pre-algebra again, and I'm understanding it finally. I'm getting a B. I'm catching up. Whew. My ESL classes in my sophomore year were 2 hours long, 2 hours in a row of nothing but English. I had to put everything else out of my mind and focus entirely on the teacher, never missing a word. I knew I had to master the language before I could succeed at anything else in this country. But when you focus really hard like that, when you cling so tight to the thread of one person's voice, you can't lose hold of the thread for an instant. If you do, and it's inevitable that you will for an instant or two sometime in the course of 2 hours, you shoot instantly into another universe as if shot from a bow. That kept happening to me in ESL class. One moment I would be listening to the teacher, and the next moment I would find myself deep in my past, wrestling with my demons, drowning in panic. And I would have to shake my head to wake out of it and tell myself, no, Farah, you're in America now. Pay attention to the teacher, the teacher. After concentrating so hard, I often left school feeling dizzy. My head usually hurt. I took the school bus home, and it always rocked with the commotion, noise, and hullabaloo of the other students. One day I decided to shut my eyes and seek silence in the privacy of my own mind. But I must have fallen asleep. When I opened my eyes, I saw that we had come to a stop someplace I had never seen before. The bus was empty, and the bus driver was shouting, "Get off, get off." I said, "I missed my stop. Could you take me back to school, or back to my bus stop, or back to any place I've ever seen before?" She said, "No, this is the end of the line and my shift is over. Get down here and go. Wherever your house is, go there now. You're on your own." So I got out and started walking back the way we had come. How many blocks I walked, I don't know. I just walked and walked, that's all I know. My poor mother was sitting at home, chewing on her fingernails and looking at the clock, thinking, where is that girl? Has she been kidnapped? If I was late, that's the conclusion she always jumped to. The girl has been kidnapped. My English was not very good yet, and strangers scared me, so I didn't want to ask for directions. I just kept going until I reached an area I recognized. But I found myself on the wrong side of an extremely busy street with no stoplights. I had to get to the other side, but it was like crossing an expressway. By the time I got home that day, I was trembling. Some days were better and some worse, but I always came home from school exhausted. In my freshman year, they put me in ESL 1. After that year in summer school, I got through ESL 2. In my sophomore year, I made it through ESL 3. Now I'm in ESL 4. At this level, only your English class is ESL. You study all the rest of your subjects with the mainstream students. Strangely enough, it's less demanding. In the ESL classes, they give more homework. Now I can get my homework done at school. Next year, I'll be out of ESL altogether. Even my English class will be mainstream. Officially, at least. I'll be caught up. And it's true that I can speak and understand English pretty well now, but I still have trouble with reading and writing. The thing is, I am not just learning to read and write in English. I'm learning to read and write, period. I only studied to the middle of second grade when my life fell apart. All I learned in Afghanistan was the alphabet. That's all. Even in my native language, I could never read a newspaper or a storybook. Once I came to America, I had to learn a new language, English, and also these new skills, reading and writing. It has been a struggle. And spelling is difficult in its own right. I don't think people appreciate how difficult spelling in English is if you don't grow up speaking the language. In the 3 years that I have been going to school in America, I have not had one class that covered spelling. Actually, many of the American students seem to have problems with spelling too. I know that they teach spelling in the lower grades here, but I think they should teach it in high school too, for those who need it, and many do. I read books as much as I can to improve my language skills. Recently, for example, I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. I wrote an essay about it for my final exam in English last semester. I liked that book, but it did not really touch me emotionally. Not like the movie. Oh my gosh. In the movie, when the man's brother kills that little girl, I just start crying. That movie affected me powerfully. I need to improve my English to the point where a book can get to me that way. One book I really liked was Across 5 Aprils, a novel about the Civil War. And there's another book, I've forgotten the title now, but it tells the story of an African girl who was brought to America as a slave. She really wants to learn how to read and write. That's her main struggle. Finally, another slave on the plantation, an older man, teaches her these skills. I forgot the girl's name. I'm not good with names. But this was a nonfiction biography. She was a real person. Oh my gosh, I could relate to her story. I found her life very inspiring. As I mentioned when I first thought about coming to America, people in Pakistan told me, "Don't go, you will become a slave there." At that time, I found such tales baffling. Why did people make up these stories, I wondered? Where did they get ideas like this? But here in America, I learned about the Civil War, and this year, in American history class, I learned how this country was founded. I read how the European settlers fought with the Indians. I realized that there was some kernel of truth to the stories people were telling in Pakistan. Americans did, at one time, import people from other continents and keep them here as slaves. The Europeans who came to this land did fight with the native people, and terrible things happened. I think people in Pakistan heard some fragments from the history of America, and they never caught on that these things belong to the past. I think that many people of Pakistan don't know that slavery is now against the law in America. I learned another astounding fact about the U.S. history from my studies. This country was built by refugees, and yet look how it has advanced. Look how it has developed. The United States is much younger than Afghanistan, as it turns out, and this information surprised me. Afghanistan is very ancient. The same people have been living there for thousands of years with one culture, one way of life, one religion, and yet, oh, how far behind they have fallen. Here, where people from many cultures, many religions, and many parts of the planet have come together, they have built such an advanced society, it amazes me. I ask myself why this is so. Why has America done so well? In our American history class, I read that many people came here from so many places. They came with ambition, they came to start over, and they worked hard. That's probably part of it. Also, they were able to raise their voices here. They were able to express themselves and search for their own beliefs and say what they believed out loud. I think that is why America has developed so remarkably. Here, people can live their lives without fear. In places like Afghanistan, by contrast, everybody is afraid. Nobody dares to raise his voice. I think America has grown strong because it lets everyone take a part. Over in Pakistan and Afghanistan and places like that, it isn't just the government that holds society back. People are afraid of their neighbors, of what others say. People hold one another in check. Here, you can try something new. If you invent something, people will congratulate you and take an interest in your invention. There, they will say, "Why don't you invent this thing? We don't want something different. What was wrong with what we had before?" Here you can announce your opinion, and if you're against something, you can say so and it becomes part of the discussion, not a reason why you have to go into hiding. I don't know why such differences exist among countries, but I think it's important that in America, the laws say you can express yourself. I think the Bill of Rights makes the big difference. The Bill of Rights gives Americans the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom to meet and gather and make plans. I like studying the history of America and of the world. Even though school is a struggle, I enjoy it, and I have been making progress. Every year in my school, the teacher keeps track of their students on a score sheet. They grade students not just on their academic work, but also on how attentive they are, how faithfully they do their homework, how much they contribute to the positive atmosphere of the school, how well they behave, what citizenship qualities they demonstrate, and so on. At the end of each semester, they add up all the numbers, and whoever gets the highest score is named Outstanding Student of the Semester. At the end of my sophomore year, I won that award. My teacher told me about it in English class. Then on a certain day, the principal and teacher, the students, and many of the parents got together at the school for a ceremony. My mother came too, and so did Alice and John. The ceremony began with a nice breakfast. The principal then announced the award and called me up to the stage. I stood there while my teacher gave a speech about me. Then I got a plaque that read Outstanding Student of 2004, second semester, along with a $25 gift certificate to a local department store. A photographer took my picture up there with all those teachers and school officials. The picture was posted in the hall at my school. It felt good to see my picture on the wall every morning when I came to school. It made me feel known. Now, in my junior year, I spend much of my time each day with Americans, for most of my classes are non-ESL. And yet, even though I am on Main Street now, and I don't interact with the American students all that much. We're friendly enough at school, but after school they go their way and I go mine. We ESL students have to work longer hours than other students. Some of us have jobs, but even those who don't work for money have to spend a lot of time studying and doing homework because we have so much catching up to do. We would like to take part in the clubs and after-school activities with American kids and go to the movies with them sometimes and listen to CDs and find out what kind of music people like here. We would like to go out with the kids our age and talk and joke and tell stories and have fun, but many of us don't have time. But our struggle is not the whole story. The American kids hold themselves apart too. They don't mingle or form friendships with kids from other countries. Whatever they do socially, and I don't know what that is, they do it among themselves. I have no American friends my age. I guess it's partly because the American kids grew up here and found their friends long ago. They don't need more friends now, so they ignore anyone they don't already know. If you say hi, they say hi back, but it doesn't lead to conversation. I wonder, though, if my American classmates are also intimidated by us. Maybe we embarrass them or something like that. Anyway, something holds them back. Certainly we refugee kids are afraid of them. We're also ashamed of our situation, of being so dependent, impoverished, and out of place. That's what holds us back from making friends. We feel shame. I know that many refugees feel this way. We're ashamed that we don't know English very well. It's hard for us to start conversations. We don't want to take the first step because we assume we'll be rejected. We think, why should an American kid who has everything want to waste his or her time with a poor refugee? I know it's hard for American students to reach out to us refugees, and maybe you worry about being rejected or put on the spot. But here is one thing I want to say in this book. It's harder for us to reach out to you, we with our clumsy English. I want to say, don't be afraid of us. You have to understand we're afraid of you. We want to make friends, but you have to take the first step. And here's another thing for us refugees. Our English can't improve if we never use it in ordinary daily life. We can't get up to speed just by taking classes. We need to have friendships and to hang around with you Americans and talk easily back and forth. Otherwise, when we leave school, we just go to our homes. Where else can we go? And at home, everyone speaks our home language. We study our books, but it's not the same as having friends. We want to join American culture, but American culture has to let us in. It's hard for us to get aggressive and push our way in. It's easier for us if we feel invited. That's what you can do. Invite us in. Every day, friendships with Americans would be alleviated, our longing for our homelands. We would feel ourselves to be part of this world. We would enjoy going to school, and we would lose our homesickness. That's what I want to say. We're shy. You have to start first.